Now that Donald Trump is officially heading back to the White House, everybody wants to know what happens now with all the outstanding legal cases against him. On Friday, Judge Tanya Chutkan granted a request from special counsel Jack Smith to pause all filing deadlines in the federal election interference or January 6th case. The break will allow prosecutors to decide whether to pursue the case at all. Politico's senior writer Ankush Khardori blames Attorney General Merrick Garland for bungling the opportunity to effectively go after Trump, writing, quote, "From the outset of the Biden presidency, it was readily apparent that Garland had little desire to investigate and potentially prosecute Trump." Joining me now is Ankush Khardori, former federal prosecutor and senior writer for Politico magazine. Ankush, anyone who has read you or listened to you on television knows that argument that I just read from your latest piece. Talk more about that. Why does Attorney General Garland bear full responsibility for what's about to happen?
I'm not sure I would say full, to be clear. Some. Okay. And as I mentioned in the column, there are a lot of other Republicans who, but I think, look, Garland and the Justice Department played an absolutely important and unintentional role here. After Trump lost in 2021, there should have been a quick and robust criminal investigation into his conduct post-2020 and to his potential financial crimes, a lot of which we were on notice of at that point in time. That should have happened promptly. In part because it was always the case that Trump might run for re-election and be able to win through democratic means. And the life cycle of a criminal case, particularly a criminal prosecution, you cannot wrap them up in 2 years, not complex ones, right? And we've just learned that. The whole country has just learned that. Yep. So, unfortunately, Merrick Garland came in, and it was apparent from the start, even when I wrote a piece after his confirmation hearing where I said, I am not sure he's actually interested in doing what may need to be done here. And, the reporting from the Washington Post and the New York Times, in-depth reporting from people like Carol Leonnig and others, basically reported that there was a 1.5 years, if not longer, delay in standing up the criminal investigation of Trump's effort to stay in power, and that they were effectively forced to do it after the January 6th committee publicly embarrassed them.
Do you think that Attorney General Garland and the administration were way too concerned with upholding precedent than prosecuting Trump? I can't imagine that, given all the stuff we've seen, that they didn't want to prosecute him.
I think that they were too preoccupied with the notion, and this was not a new notion. We saw it in the Obama administration too, that it would be too politically controversial for them to investigate and potentially prosecute the first former president in the country's history, and that they wanted to sort of tamp down the political, sort of bring down the political temperature. I think that was extremely unwise. But I would just say, in addition to Garland, of course, Garland didn't just walk into the Justice Department all on his own. I mean, he was selected by Joe Biden, right? Mm-hmm. And there was reporting even during the 2020 transition about how Biden himself did not want his Justice Department to be investigating Trump because he thought that would sort of overtake everything that they were trying to do. So he picked an attorney general who's matched his sensibilities. So Joe Biden owns this situation, too.
You mentioned earlier that A.G. Garland doesn't bear the full responsibility. You did mention Republicans, particularly Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans. Why do they bear some responsibility for Trump basically getting away with everything?
Yeah, so as we all know, after January 6th, Trump was impeached over that conduct. The House impeached him, and then there was a trial in the Senate. Yep. And had he been convicted of the charge was inciting an insurrection in the House impeachment articles. Had he been convicted by the Senate, he would not have been able to run for re-election, given the 14th Amendment prohibition. So on allowing someone who's committed conduct like that to run to serve in the presidency. So Mitch McConnell, though, and almost all of Senate Republicans voted to acquit him. If only a handful of them had joined Democrats, he would have been done for.
Mm-hmm. If McConnell had voted to convict, he would have been convicted. In the less than the minute that we have left, have you been paying attention to who the potential Trump Attorney General might be? And if so, is there somebody you really who could be AG, who the American people should be very concerned could be AG?
Yeah, I have been paying attention to some of the reporting, including the reporting from NBC. I think they have put Matt Whitaker, as I recall, on a short list as well. Matt Whitaker was the acting Attorney General.
Yes, that is correct.
He's not up to the task. He showed that the first time. He's not up to the task to be the Attorney General. The other person is Mark Paoletta, who is a conservative legal ideologue, who is usually tasked with pushing Republican legal propaganda into the public space. He would not be a good Attorney General. I don't think he's ever even worked in the Justice Department.
Last quick question. Should President Biden, in the time that he has left as President of the United States, do you think he should pardon his son?
You know, I think that's a very complicated question that I am giving some serious thought to be honest. So I don't want to jump the gun on that, if you don't mind, but I think it's a complicated question.
Okay, that sounds to me like you are working on your next piece. Ankush Khardori, as always, thank you very much for coming to the Saturday Show.